Hey, welcome to the Digital Insurance Agent Podcast. So glad you've chosen to join me today. And with me is Chris Castanes. And he is here today to talk about all things prospecting and networking. And so, Chris, glad to have you with us.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Well, in our conversation earlier, Chris, one of the things that was so fascinating is not only have you been an insurance agent for a number of years, but you've also gone into stand-up comedy, which is kind of an interesting segue. So I'm going to let you kind of tell your story and the journey, and then we're going to talk about how those two things really tie together and really get into the nuts and bolts of how we can apply this to the agents that are listening today.
All right. Well, long story short, I was just always the guy in school that told jokes and, you know, I wasn't going to be the star athlete, let's put it that way. So my outlet was humor. And years went by and I was selling insurance, and I've always just kind of been a smart aleck anyway, and selling insurance. And I would just make comments, whatever, to people, uh, various things that, because when you're selling life insurance, especially, it's a very serious subject. And, I'm not the guy that's going to go in there and just be like, hey, let's talk about when you die, and just keep a straight face. I can't do it. And for instance, I'll tell people I used to work with a really large company and they want us to have coats and ties and the whole thing. And I was like, look, you're going to get the coat or you're going to get the tie. You're not going to get both until you buy some life insurance and I come to your funeral. That's when you get the coat and the tie, a little levity there just to kind of lighten the mood. And but during that time I've been selling insurance for forever, but during that time, about 2012, I just dabbled in some amateur stand-up comedy competitions and things like that, and I actually won one. So I was unofficially the funniest guy in my county. I guess.
Great.
I don't know. I don't know if there's like a sash for that or whatever, a crown. But anyway, so I did a little bit of stand-up comedy after that, just here and there. But then in 2017, I wrote my first book, which is kind of snarky and things like that. And I was going to Toastmasters. I enjoy speaking, and I said, well, why don't I just do some, like, a not a a sales talk, but infused with a lot of humor. So that's kind of experimenting with that a little bit. It's not haven't had the doors just getting torn down with people demanding my presence lately or anything. But every once in a while I'll get, hey, would you come talk to our group, and go in, and it's sales. We talk about sales and how to move the process along, and I'll throw in a lot of really, I mean, they're true stories, but they're funny, and they're things that have happened to me over the years, from when I first started out selling door-to-door accident insurance plans out in the middle of nowhere to now, where I'm more or less, market a website a lot more, and market myself that way to get leads and prospect. But I still do the traditional things too. I still like to, go to networking events, and every once in a while I'll go out, and I might, if I'm really bored, I might even go out and cold call. It's just
Oh, wow.
because I do thrive on rejection.
Good. Well, let's talk about that. So you brought up some interesting things. You started door to door, and I kind of want to back up to that. It's kind of interesting. I started as a door to door salesman years ago, water softeners, encyclopedias. So,
Oh,
I think some of us just we thrive on rejection. That's that's our thing. But let's talk about that. That journey. So those are building blocks, though, and talk about those early experiences. What did you learn in those door to door days?
well, they sent us to a training class for 2 weeks, and these guys were so polished that we were literally in day three of the training class before we realized it was door to door sales. It was, I mean, they didn't even tell us that part. And so, it was, you learn how to just go and do it. I mean, you have to go to somebody's door and knock on it and pretend like you're happy to be there. And there's a lot of little tricks you learn. Like we were out in the country, and there was the long driveway that was a quarter of a mile long, and you get there, and there's this little house and about 50 dogs. So you would have this big bag of like the cheap vanilla wafers in your car, and you put grab a handful of them, not all of them, and you put some in your pocket because, and I'll tell you why. But then you get out of the car and throw them away from the door from the house. So you run to the house, knock on the door. The other ones in your pocket were for the trip back to the car. So because otherwise the dogs would just be all over you, and things like that. It was interesting. You learn a lot about yourself, and you learn a lot about selling. I mean, if you can sell in that environment, you can do anything. I mean, there were times I would ride down the road. It would be dark at night, cold, in the middle of winter. I'd see a little trailer with like a light on. I'm like, great, somebody's home. And these guys, you walk in, somebody's tired. They've been working all day. They had kids running around. And I'm like, hey, just wanted to show you this accident policy, and they're looking at me. They feel sorry for me.
Yeah,
And come out of there with a check, you're the man at that point, or the woman, whatever.
exactly.
So it was tough though. I had people pulling guns on me. Once I had a guy threaten to pull a gun on me, and the second time I had an actual lady who was still upset from the first guy before me, and her husband was back there waving a pistol around. And then I took that, but you can take that skill set and transfer it at that point. And I did. I went from that to selling office supplies, and I did that for a couple of years. And it was it's a whole lot easier cold calling offices than it is going to someone's home in the middle, at night in the dark. And so I did that for a while. Then I got into retail for a few years. Then I got back into insurance, and I've been doing it, almost 25 years this time around.
Good.
So but it's just the skill set is transferable if and you can always build on it. Like you said, it's building blocks. And when you're first doing that first job of going out and selling insurance, you really learn a lot about yourself more than anything.
That's great. One of the things that I think is important, that you bring up is what you learn about yourself. But I think the other part of that is you start to develop a thicker skin.
Oh yeah.
And the more rejection proof you become, I think the better equipped you are. And I think that's one of the things that I noticed, especially during COVID. Maybe you noticed this as well. One of the conversations I had with a lot of our clients is I said, you're going to have to get hungry again. You're going to have to treat your business like it's day one. You just opened the door. Nobody knows who you are. You may have to go bang some doors and reintroduce yourself and do things that, when you first got licensed, you were willing to do. But now here it is 20 years later, and you've gotten comfortable, people calling you and searching you out. And I think those building blocks become important. And so, let's talk a little bit about your progression, because you moved along, and I know you've moved into that agency ownership role, and so there comes a point where really you kind of go back to square one, and you do have to get hungry again.
You're right. And when you said go back to square one, the first thing I just thought of is, these professional golfers on the PGA Tour at the end of the season, they go back to square one. They go back, they get a coach, they just start working on the fundamentals all over again. And when COVID hit, nobody wanted us in their houses to come talk to them about insurance or go visit them in a coffee shop. Everything was shut down. So for whatever reason, a few months before COVID hit, I was already making that pivot a little bit. It wasn't like I knew something was going to happen. I was just like, yeah, I'm going to see if I can make it a little easier on myself. And that's when I started working on my website. And it just happened that when COVID hit, I just had to speed it up a little bit more. So I was doing more SEO marketing at that point, trying to pivot things in that direction, fix my website to where people could actually go to the website and run their own quotes, or ask questions, or make it more interactive, because before it was just informational purposes. Hey, here's a great blog on long-term care insurance. Now I want people to actually go in there and take action. So I'm doing a lot of that kind of thing as well. But I still, like I said, I still do the virtual part, but I do the more traditional let's go out and see people. And, now that everything's opened back up again, of course, it's a lot easier, but we still remember.
Exactly.
We'll never forget trying to sell somebody insurance. You got a mask over your mouth, you know.
Exactly. But you bring up something that I think is a great talking point. Technology is wonderful. It does the heavy lifting for you, but the danger is getting lazy. And I think, a lot of agents have forgotten the fundamentals. We still have to be able to communicate. We still have to be able to talk to people. Um, and just to rely on the technology to do everything, I think can be a real hazard. I would love to hear your input on that.
Yeah, I mean, you got. I mean, the hardest part of our job is typically finding someone to talk to. If I can just find somebody to sit down with me and have a conversation, usually that's where I can find the pain points and, wait a minute, I have a solution for that. You need some disability insurance or whatever. But when you don't have somebody in front of you and you're in that situation like that, where you're just having to, I can't imagine being a new agent in 2021. That would just be, because now when everything changes, like you said, you're becoming lazy by just sitting back and, I'm going to make some silly memes and post them on Facebook or LinkedIn or whatever, and that'll get me through. And that's not going to get you through. It'll keep you top of mind maybe, and that's a good thing too. But to just constantly know how to ask for referrals, and the basic things that we did when we were first coming up, it's like, how do you have some referral language? Do you know how to go to a networking event and get some leads, and how are you following up on that stuff? But the first part is the most important part, which is just finding that person to talk to. After that, I mean, nowadays you can do Zoom calls and whatever else, and it all works out. But it's not the same as just sitting around and, well, I'm going to just talk on, have a YouTube channel, which I do, but that's all, other stuff, those are things you do at night when you have nothing better to do. I used to work with a guy, and he'd say between 10 and 4, you need to either be seeing clients or fighting to see clients. 5:30, then I can make little dumb videos and post them on YouTube and whatever, and follow up on appointments and stuff. But, I'm still in that mindset sometimes where I just like to, I don't like the cold call, but I have no problem getting on Facebook and dropping, messages. Hey, let's get together for a cup of coffee next week or whatever. They know why I'm going to ask them for a cup of coffee. I'm going to try to sell them some insurance, but, I don't say that.
Exactly.
It's
Exactly.
implied.
Exactly. But you bring up a good point. There are income producing activities, and I think it's important that every agent look at where are they spending their time. Are you spending your time on those income producing activities, or have you decided to let the things that don't make money crowd out that space? So that's great. The
Going to lunch with another agent is not a money making activity.
No, it is not a money-making activity, so it should not be the majority of your time. Now, Chris, the thing I really want to get into, because I love this part of your story, and this is the issue of communication. I had a mentor many years ago that drilled this into my head: communication equals wealth. And the other thing that he drilled into my head was funny equals money. If you can get people laughing, if you can get their emotions moving in the right direction with you, that sale is much easier to bring about. And so I kind of want to go down that path with you. You talked about the networking, you talked about the prospecting. And we're getting prospected all the time. If we're on LinkedIn, everybody wants to be your friend, and they want to be your friend, and 30 seconds later they want an appointment with you. Terrible methodology. Yeah, terrible methodology. Let's talk about what are the right ways to build those conversations and to develop those relationships, but then to really use things like a little bit of humor, um, to really engage with somebody and get them to open up, to where that they are willing to say, yeah, let's sit down, let's have coffee,
I mean,
let's set that appointment.
you know, people know when they're being sold something, and they always put their guard up. And if you can get them to laugh a little bit, the guard comes down. And the more, I'm not saying you have to yuck it up. You don't have to be a comedian, but there's times I work with an enrollment company also. We do large group enrollments. And I might see, for instance, last week I had days where I was seeing 20 people in 4 hours. They were just coming through the door. Um, and you have you just have the same little patter I have with everybody, the same little jokes, but they first time they've heard them, so I'm, so so you can throw them out there, and just say little things. We would sell life insurance, for instance, and we'll show them a couple options. Here's a $10,000 policy, here's a $15,000 policy, and I'll tell them, this one is your funeral, this is your funeral with an open bar. And they chuckle, they laugh at that, they kind of relax, and the next thing you know, I've sold 10 whole life policies. They might all be little 10 and $15,000 policies, but the company doesn't mind. They're making the sale and they're happy too. That just I mean, you can have the same little jokes you share or whatever, but it just lightens the mood. There again, when you're talking about somebody being dead or somebody being disabled or somebody being in a nursing home, these are subjects people don't want to talk about generally, and I always say we work in an industry where we sell something people do not want to buy. My rule of thumb has always been to fill in the blank, like I am saving up for blank. Nobody is saving up for long-term care insurance. If there's something in that blank, that's something people want to buy. Yeah, they're saving up for a car, they're saving up for a house, they're saving up for their retirement. Nobody is, man, I sure could use a disability policy right now. So we work in an industry where we need to really lighten the mood, get their guard down, and convince them you need this, and I'm on your side. It's not high pressure. It's good pressure. Like when you're, if I'll tell people I'm going to talk to you like I'm your big brother, and I've been around the block a few times, and you need this. I'm not going to beat you up if you don't get it, but it's something you need. Nobody wants it. You need it. Insurance in general, all kinds of insurance are things you buy hoping you never have to use them. And people, that's a hard sell when you talk about an intangible product, and well, let's talk about how your family's going to get by if you're not here. I had a guy one time, oddly, just a little off topic, but not he and his, I'm trying to think of how to diplomatically say this, that they were not an attractive couple, and and he refused to buy any life insurance. And I said, well, what about your wife? And he goes, well, she's pretty hot, she could find another husband. And I was trying to break it to him, and I was like, I don't, maybe. So but things like that, it's a tough sell. I mean, we're not selling cars or homes and things like that. We're selling something that people need but don't want to buy, generally speaking. I mean, if I didn't have to have health insurance, I wouldn't get it, but I need it, and that's the business we're in. And that's why you need the thick skin and a little Teflon or whatever they call it these days, something that's just going to slide off of you, like, so,
Exactly.
you're not, nobody's going to hurt my feelings if they say no. I've done this long enough. I'm like, that's fine. Let's move along. There's other fish in the sea. And we get, when you're starting out, you get a few prospects and they're kind of jerking you around a little bit. And you're like, you kind of want to hang on to them. I'm like, no, let's let that one go. Let's go catch us another fish. There's more out there. Don't get too attached. Don't get emotionally attached to any of them, because it doesn't make any, let them get emotionally attached to you. Don't get emotionally attached to them.
Exactly. Exactly. I think that's great advice. Some will, some won't. So what? Next.
Exactly. I mean, that's why, and that's why it's always important to keep your pipeline full. If you can keep the pipeline full, then you don't have to worry about if that guy buys one or not, because there's another one in the pipeline. Now I guess they call it a sales funnel.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. There's a
Same thing. Yep.
same thing. Yeah.
Exactly. Well, and you bring up something so critical here, keeping that pipeline full. And one of the things that I thought was great when you and I talked before, everybody is so excited about all the online stuff, and of course, we have a marketing agency for insurance agents, and of course, that's why everybody comes to us. Hey, use all the technology, and keep us full with leads and keep our funnel full. But the truth is, I see too many agents neglect the tried and true, uh, and I hate to say it, old school, belly to belly, hand to hand, you know, tactics that have worked for years and years and years. Just getting out, being a part of the community, getting to know people, getting involved, and it's really kind of fascinating to me, Chris. We're trying to help people. Hey, here's some things you could be doing on your Google business profile that would really help you, move. And it's all this belly to belly stuff. It's, get out here. We need pictures of you face to face with people in your community. We need pictures of you doing things out in your community. And sometimes it's like pulling teeth. And I think that's a critical component of what I've seen you sharing with other people is don't forget those skills, because they are just as valuable today. When you're out and about at the kids' game, when you're out and about in the community, those things are just as valuable as they ever were.
Yeah. And in my case, because I work for this enrollment company, I've gotten licensed in 6 states, which I'm not going to go to Florida and knock on doors or be a part of the community. So the easy middle ground there is locally here. If it's within a few counties, yeah, you can do what you're talking about, which is that ground game. Get out there and meet people and knock on doors and talk to them and drop off cards and brochures, whatever. But then you can use the internet and social media marketing to cast that broader net, and that's how you get that phone call from somebody in 300 or 400 miles away, out of the blue, like, hey, I saw something you were posting online or whatever. So when I'm on LinkedIn, or that and it makes it hard, because when you're on LinkedIn, you have to kind of look geographically who's in my I'm not selling something that's like everybody else, where you can sell it across state lines. I can only market in those 6 states. And so when I'm doing LinkedIn or Instagram or any of that stuff, I'm always trying to stay within those geographic limits. And but that the two go together. There's plenty of it's just casting a wider net. I'm like, well, if I got these licenses, I might as well use them. So that's the way I've kind of approached it.
Absolutely. Well, let's kind of shift gears a little bit. Let's talk about the book, Nearly Motivated. Tell us what got you writing.
Right.
What's in
There it
Nearly
is, right there.
Motivated?
Look at that.
Yep, right behind you.
There it is. Who knew?
Look
How
at
did
that
get
product placement. That's
there? I
incredible.
know. It's very subliminal. Yeah, that's my second book. And what I did was my first book was called You're Going to Be Great at This. That was 2017. And then as I was getting ready to do some speaking, and I had done a few little talks here and there, and then COVID hit, and I went home and I started blogging, because I was just bored. There wasn't a whole lot to do at first. So I started doing some blogging, and then I was getting ready to go do some speaking again. And I said, well, I don't want to go out and do this on a book that's 5 and 6 years old. So I just took the blog and honed it down and made the second book, which is Nearly Motivated, and it's available on Amazon. And it's just more of the same. We have what we call dumb stories in it, which are just true things that have happened to me over the years, and I try to make them relevant to the topic somehow. So, But yeah, it's been, I enjoy it, and I have a little um thing I'll do. Like I'll just walk up to somebody and I'll like, hey, can you hold this book for a minute and smile? And I'll take a picture of them, and then I'll take the book and run away, and and then I'll post it, another happy reader. And the person's looking at me like, who is this
Great.
guy? But I had a guy about 2 weeks ago. I met this nice lady. I was enrolling her, and she said, "Well, I really don't need anything. My husband sells insurance." And I said, "Oh, that's great." And we talked, and I gave her one of my business cards. And about 2 hours later, he contacts me through email and says, "I'd like to get a copy of your book." And I just drove across town that afternoon, gave him one, gave him a copy. And he emailed me that the next morning at like 6 o'clock, and he said he stayed up the entire night reading the entire book all in before he went to bed. And I was like, awesome! I have a fan. So
That's good. But I do want to say this, one of the things that I think a lot of agents do miss out on is books lend extra credibility psychologically. And I'm a fan as a marketer of anybody who's going to be doing any kind of presentations or things like that. Always have a book. It's a great business card. If you have hot prospects, you can throw a book in the mail to them. And it doesn't get lost like all the other business cards. It sits on
right.
the desk, and they either have to put it on the shelf or they have to read it. So
Right. And these books are both on sales, and which are for anybody in sales or business owner or self-employed, just marketing tips and things. There is another blog out there that I have considered doing basically an insurance book. Um, but it's a like you said, it's a great marketing thing. People every once in a while I'll walk in, if it looks like it's a good prospect, I might just hey, here's a book, and give them a copy or whatever, if it's relevant. I don't want to make it their mom just died, and we're dealing, oh well, let me give you this funny book I wrote. you know so it just depends on but if they're a business owner, they appreciate it, or it
very
sells.
much so.
you know
Great. Well,
yeah.
Chris, where can somebody learn more about you? Where can they connect with you?
I'm on LinkedIn, and I'm trying to think where else. I'm everywhere. I'm on Instagram. I've got my business Surf Financial Brokers pages on Instagram as well. And that's one of the things I've done on LinkedIn is I've actually made a business page separate. Just there again, trying to find those people who are in my geographical area. Let's get them there. And or they can just come to my channels on my website. I'm on YouTube. We have a Chris Castanes channel. I'd love to have some subscribers. I'm dying of loneliness. And and then we have a Instagram channel. I'm trying to remember what the other one was. I'm on a bunch of them. You just look me up, Chris Castanes, and there's not a whole lot of us running around, so you can find me.
Very good. Fantastic. Yeah, in fact, if you go to chriscastanes.com, you should be able to find everything there as well, correct?
That's more of the speaking in the book,
Okay,
and then Surf Financial Brokers, and then I do want to get a cheap plug in real quick.
perfect.
A little marketing tip I did. Of course, we all know life insurance has living benefits, and I've always been telling people I'm your friend with living benefits. And so I thought somebody would have used that by now, and I went on GoDaddy, and nobody had bought the domain name Friends with Living Benefits. So I bought that name, redirected it right back to my webpage. And so we had to put the little tagline, it says Surf Financial Brokers, and then, your friends in living benefits or whatever. And so we just, as a goof, I've put a QR code recently on my car with a sign magnet, and all it says is living friends with living benefits. And we're waiting to see what kind of response we get with that. We've only been doing it for less than a week, so we'll see. We
Excellent. And
might get people.
I'll be curious to hear about that one.
Yeah. I'll let you know.
Good or bad.
I know, people might expect something else, I don't know.
Exactly. Excellent. Well, Chris, it's been good having you on the episode this week. And for our listeners, thanks for tuning in. Hope to have you join us again soon.
Thanks for having me.